Hello! In this video, we are going to create a Doom clone in Unreal Engine 5 with a simple weapon and enemy character. To get started, open up the Epic Games launcher. If you don't already have this, you can go over to unrealengine.com and click the download button in the top right corner. This will install the Epic Games launcher to your computer. Once you've done this, head over to the library section and make sure to install the latest version of Unreal Engine to your computer. So currently, right now, the latest version is 5.1. Once you've done that, go over here where it says launch and just change this to be the latest version of Unreal Engine and then click the launch button. Once it loads, it should open up the Unreal project browser. Go over to the game section and it should show us a bunch of templates of how we can start our project. Select the first person as we're going to be creating a first person game, and under project defaults, just select blueprint and we can leave all these default settings. Then under project name, call this our retro FPS game. Once you've done this, click create. Once the project loads, it should look something like this. And if I click the play button, I should be this first person character and I can move around the map. Hello. The next thing we're going to do is change a couple of things in this template. The reason we selected it is because it comes with this first person character controller, although it also comes with this weapon system, and I want us to create our weapon system from complete scratch. So if we go over to the content drawer and go over to the first person character, go to the viewport tab and just select the arms and just delete them, as we're not going to need them. Just go compile and save this. Then if we close this and select the weapon inside of the level and just delete this. Then if you go to the content drawer, and we can just delete the BP weapon component and the BP rifle pickup and this first person projectile, as we're not going to need them in our project. We're going to be creating our own weapons and our own projectile systems. So just delete these. With this, we are now ready to develop our weapon system. As we develop our retro FPS game, we're going to be accessing our content drawer quite a lot. In order to make sure that this is permanently there, as it'll be very easy for us to access the things we need, go over to Window and select Content Browser and select Content Browser 1. And this will make sure that our content drawer is always there. The next thing we're going to do is set up a weapon that our player character can use. We're going to do this by creating a master weapon blueprint. Then from this weapon blueprint, you'll easily be able to add more weapons later on. So the next thing we need to do is import the models of the weapons that our player is going to use. Attached in this course, I'm going to include some assets. Make sure to download them, as we're going to use them to help build our game. Once you've done this, go over to the content folder and then right click and go create new folder and call this sprites. Then if you head inside here, then briefly close Unreal Engine. Attached in the assets that you should have downloaded, there should be this folder called weapons. Just select it and drag it inside of the sprites folder. Then click import all. This will import a bunch of images that we're going to use for our weapons inside of our game. Now, the first weapon that we're going to create is going to be the pistol. So if you go over to the pistol folder, you're going to see 5 images of some pistols, although they look a bit weird. In order to make sure images are clear when we import them into Unreal Engine, simply select the image. So I'm going to select this first one and hold Shift on my keyboard and then select the last one, and this will select all the pistol images. Then if I right click and go sprite actions, apply paper 2D texture settings, this will make it so that all the images are now clear. Next, if we select each pistol image, just right click and go sprite actions and go create sprite. Now that we've made each of these images a sprite, we can combine them into one flipbook so that when my player fires the pistol weapon, it will basically flip through all these images in a cool flipbook. So in order to create a flipbook, simply just select each pistol sprite, so I'll hold Shift and select all 5 pistol sprites. Then if I right click and go create flipbook and just call this pistol fire. And if I just double click and head inside here, and if I just click this little pause button, we can see that in this pistol flipbook, it's gonna flip through the 5 sprites that we just made. And all together, it kind of plays an animation of my player character firing their weapon. If you ever wanted to change how fast this plays, we can go over to sprite and frames per second. And if I make this something like 5, then it's going to be really slow. But if I make this something like 100, then it's going to go through this very quickly. Let's just leave this at 15 as I think that looks pretty good. We can then save this. We then also just need a flipbook for when our pistol is not being fired. So if you just select the first sprite, right click and go create flipbook and call this pistol idle. So now we have the animations that we're going to have when we have our pistol weapon. We have it when it's idle and we have it when it's being fired. The next thing to do is create a blueprint for our pistol weapon. If we just go back to our content folder, just right click and go new folder and call this blueprints. Head inside here and then right click and create a new folder and call this weapons. Then if we head inside here, just right click and go blueprint class, select an actor, so an actor is an object that can be placed or spawned in the world, and just call this BP underscore base weapon. So if you remember earlier, the way we're going to create our weapon system is by creating this master weapon blueprint. Then from this master weapon blueprint, we're going to be able to easily create and add more weapons. If we head inside here, the first thing I need us to do is go over to the components tab. Here in the components tab, we can add things such as collisions, meshes, and all that type of stuff to our blueprint. I want us to go add and look for a paper flipbook because each weapon is going to have its own paper flipbook. Just call this our weapon flipbook. Then if you go over to details, here we can customize the details of the component. Here under source flipbook, just select the pistol idle. So as we can see, it's going to show us our pistol idle flipbook. I know this from experience, but currently our pistol is not facing the correct direction. In order to make sure that an object is facing forwards or the correct direction, what we can do is go add and look for arrow. If I add this arrow, this will basically show me the forward direction of this blueprint. So we can see that our weapon is currently not facing forward. So if you just select the weapon flipbook and then go over here where it says select and rotate objects, it should change the gizmo so it looks like this. Select the blue one and then rotate the flipbook so it's facing forward. That way, when our player character is holding the pistol weapon, this is kind of the view that they're going to see it from. If we left it at like this, then when my player character holds the pistol weapon, they'll see it from this and this would be incorrect. So let's just change it so it's 90. Another way of basically changing the rotation is we can just play around with the values here, or you can use the gizmo tool here. For now, that's all we're going to set up in our base weapon. So just go compile and save, and then we can close this. Then if I just right click on this BP base weapon and go create child blueprint class, and I'll just call this my BP underscore pistol. And if I double click and head inside this blueprint, we can see that it already comes with this weapon flipbook. And here, if say I was making a different weapon, I could change the source flipbook to be something else. Later on, we're going to add to our BP base weapon so it has more components and things that we can change within it. But for now, we're just going to set it up with a weapon flipbook. So now we have our BP pistol. The next thing I want to do is make it so my player character can hold and carry this blueprint. In order to do that, we can close this and then go to our first person blueprint folder and go to the viewport. Then I want you to go add and look for child actor. And the way this child actor works is it can hold any blueprint class. So if we go over to details and then go to child actor component, here under child actor class, select the BP pistol. And now my first person character is going to be holding the BP pistol. I know this from making this project before, but all the images in this project that we use for the weapons are a bit big. So if we go to the BP base weapon and go to the weapon flipbook, with the scale anchor checked, just reduce the size of this to 0.07. Because currently right now they're very big. So if we just do this across all our weapons, the weapon flipbook is going to be small and it looks a bit better in our first person character. Next, move the child actor so it's just in front of the camera. Currently when I move it, it's very imprecise. In order to have a lot more precision when I'm moving an object in Unreal Engine, all we can do is go over here and go to set the position grid snap value. And basically the smaller this value, the more control I'm going to have. So make this 1 And now I'm going to be able to move this child actor with very fine detail. And we just want to place this in front of our camera. And now if I go compile, close this and go play, we should see the BP pistol in front of us. Although a couple things look a bit weird. When I move the camera, the gun is not moving with me. And this still looks a bit off. So if we go back to our first person character, for our child actor, in order to make sure our weapon moves with our camera, simply just select it and drag it to our first person camera. And now when we move around our camera, our weapon will also move around with it. And I just need to play around and find a good value of where I should position this child actor, because currently it's a bit too close. The further away I make it, the smaller the image will look. I'm just going to play around and find a good value of where I should place this, and then I'll let you know what that is. Okay, so it seems a value of 20 in the x-axis and around -6 in the z-axis works pretty well. So I'm just going to close this and go play. And as you can see, this looks a bit better. When I move around, my pistol weapon moves around with me, and I can just hold this BP pistol weapon. In the next lecture, we're going to make it so that we can fire and shoot this pistol weapon, and when we do that, we'll make it play the fire pistol flipbook. Hello! In this next lecture, we're going to go over how we can actually make it so that we can shoot and fire our pistol weapon. And the way we're going to do that is by using a line trace system. If you don't know what a line trace is, don't worry, we're going to go over it. But basically, we're going to shoot an invisible line in front of our weapon whenever we shoot it. And if this invisible line hits something, then we're going to apply damage to it. So let's go over how we create this. If you open up the BP base weapon, and go to components and go add, and look for a scene. And just call this our line trace. Then if you go over to select and translate objects, and just move this line trace slightly in front of the weapon flipbook. What is that? I'm finding it very sensitive to like move around in this blueprint. If you go over to here where it says camera speed and make this something like 2, it'll move a lot slower and it's a bit more manageable. Okay, next go over to functions and go create new function and just call this fire weapon. And the idea here is whenever we fire our weapon, we're going to call this function and it'll run all the nodes inside of it. So whenever we call our fire weapon, the first thing we're going to do is drag off here and look for line trace for objects. Our line trace needs a starting and an ending location. Where our line trace is going to start is going to be wherever our line trace is in our weapon. So if we just drag in our line trace and drag off here and look for get world location and connect this to the start. Where our line trace is going to end is going to be a couple thousand units in front of our line trace. So our line trace is going to start here, but we're going to end it, let's say, a couple thousand units here. You'll be able to customize how far this line trace is going to be. So in order to get our ending location, we need to drag in our line trace again, and this time drag off here and look for get world rotation. Then from here, just drag off and look for get forward vector. This will get the forward direction of wherever our line trace is. From here, we just need to drag off and look for multiply, and then right click on this second value and go convert pin and convert this to be a float. Then just right click on this and promote this to a variable and call this line trace distance. Compile this, and for now, make the line trace distance 4000. Then, if you just drag off the get world location and look for add, and connect this into here, and then connect this into end. So just to do a quick recap of what I've done, the ending location, we're first going to get the rotation of our line trace, then we're going to get the forward direction of this, and we'll multiply this value by 4000, then we add this onto the starting location of our line trace, and this will be the ending location of our line trace. The next thing we need to do, why this has failed to compile, is to find the objects that our line trace is going to be looking for. So if we just drag off object type and look for make array, and just add 2 more pins. This first one, we're going to leave this at world static. So our line trace is going to be looking for any object which has world static. While static are objects such as this cube, this wall, or the floor, we want our line trace to be able to detect if it's hit a wall or something, so we'll just leave this. The next one, we want to change this to be while dynamic. While dynamic can also include objects such as cubes, walls, or the floor, so just leave this at while dynamic. And for this third one, we want to change this to be pawn. If I go over to my BP first person character and just select their cap tool component, go over to collision, and we can currently see our first person character has a pawn collision. Later on in this course, when we set up enemies, we're also going to give them a pawn collision. So we want our line trace to be able to detect objects with the pawn collision. That was the reason that we got this little error message, so we can just go compile. The current system that we've made is so that whenever we fire a weapon, we're going to do a line trace for some certain objects: a while static, a while dynamic, and a pawn. If this line trace hits one of these objects, then this return value is going to be true. So if you just right click and look for branch and connect this return value into here. Once we do our line trace, if we hit something, then we're going to apply damage to whatever we hit. In order to do that, we can just drag off this R hit result and look for break hit result. This R hit basically contains all the information about the actor that we've hit with our line trace. Click this little arrow and it will expand and show us all the information about the actor that we've hit. What we want to do is get the hit actor and just drag off true and look for apply damage and hook up hit actor to damaged actor. And under base damage, just right click and promote this to a variable and call this weapon damage. So we may make it so that certain weapons do more damage than others. Just compile this. Let's just make it so that every weapon will have a default weapon damage of at least 1. Just so that you can visually see the line trace that I'm talking about, if you go over to draw debug type, just change this to be for duration. Next, if you go over to the event graph, we just want to right click in some free space and look for add custom event and call this shoot weapon. Then I want you to right click and look for add custom event and call this stop shooting. Then compile and save this. The next thing we're going to do is go over to our BP pistol. So I'll close this and open up my BP pistol. And in some free space in the event graph, we're going to right click and look for the start shooting. Sorry, I think I called it shooting. Yeah, event shoot weapon. So the custom event that we just made here. And whenever we call the shoot weapon, what we're going to do is just drag off here and look for do once. Then we're going to call the fire function that we just made, so the fire weapon. And this will do a line trace on wherever our line trace is in our weapon. After we do this, I want my weapon to play its weapon firing flipbook. So if we just drag in the weapon flipbook, drag up here and look for set flipbook. And here under new flipbook, select the pistol fire. Then we want to just drag off the weapon flipbook and get its length. So this one, get flipbook length, and then drag off here and look for delay. So we're going to have a delay for however long our weapon firing animation is. And after this delay, we're going to get our weapon flipbook and set it back to the pistol fire one. So if we just copy this, I'll go Control C and Control V. And then here, I'll change this to be the pistol idle. And then we want to reset this do once. So I'm just going to right click here and look for add custom event. And I'll call this reset weapon and connect this into here. And then after we set our weapon back to idle, we can call the reset weapon flipbook. Then we can just compile and save this. That's all for this lecture. In the next lecture, we're going to go over how to make it so our player character can actually fire and shoot the weapons that they're holding. In this next lecture, we're going to make it so our player can actually fire and shoot their weapon. If we close this and go over to the first person character blueprint and go over to the event graph. In the latest version of Unreal Engine 5.1, they changed the way that we add controls to our game. If you go over to event begin play, we have this add mapping context, and this mapping context basically defines and stores all the information about the controls in our game. To go over to where it's located, click this little browse icon, and it'll take us to this folder, IMC default. If I double click and open this up, it will show me all the different controls I have in my game. So I have one for jumping, moving, and looking. And if I go to my first person character, we have some controls for looking around, moving, and jumping. We're going to add our own control for when we shoot our gun. In order to do that, click this little add action mapping, and we need to create a new control for shooting. Because we started in the first person template, we already have this shooting one, but I want to go over how we can add some controls so you understand the process of it. So I'm just going to close this. And we also have this IMC weapons. This was used with the old first person weapon that we deleted a couple of lectures ago. So you just delete this, as we won't use this, and go over to actions and just delete this shooting action because I want to go over the process of creating this ourselves. Okay, so to create a new control, just right click and go input and select input action. Just call this IA_fire. And double click and head inside here. For now, we can leave all these settings as default as we don't need to change anything. Then if you go back to IMC default, and here under mappings, select the IA fire that we just made. Then here under select the key value, select the button that you want to use to trigger this action. So I want it so that whenever I press the left mouse button, it will call this action. So here under search, I'm going to look for the left mouse button and just select it. Then if I go back to my BP first person character, in some free space, I'm going to right click and look for IA fire. And here it is, IA fire. And whenever I press the left mouse button, it's going to call this trigger node. And when I call this trigger node, what I want to do is get my child actor, and I want to call the event shoot weapon inside of it. So, because we're going to be having loads of different weapons and systems, we need to create a reference to the base weapon inside of our first person character. So in order to do that, if we go back to the event graph and event begin play, after we do this, what we're going to do is just drag in our child actor. From here, we can drag off here and look for get child actor. This will get whatever actor that we've assigned inside of here. And from here, because we know our child actor is going to be either a child or the base weapon, we can drag off here and look for cast to BP base weapon. And just connect all the nodes here. And just so that we can easily access and reference the base weapon, right click on it and go promote to variable and call this our main weapon. Then, whenever we call the IA fire, what we're going to do is just drag in our main weapon and look for get main weapon, and we are going to call the shoot weapon inside of it. So if I just drag up here and look for shoot weapon and hook up triggered to here. And just go compile and save. Now, inside of our BP pistol, because it's a child of the BP base weapon, when we're holding the pistol and we call the shoot weapon, it's going to run all these nodes. So we can test everything out now. So I'm going to close this, go play, and press left mouse button. And when I press the left mouse button, we can see a line trace from here to 4,000 units in front of wherever I shoot. Although currently our line trace is green. The line trace will only go green when it hits something. And right now it's hitting the player character or our gun. That's why it's going green. So we need to make our line trace ignore certain actors. In order to do that, it's very simple. We can go over to our BP base weapon and go over to the fire weapon. And here we have actors to ignore. Here under actors to ignore, just drag off here and look for make array. And for this first one, just drag off here and look for self. This will make it so that it will ignore itself if it accidentally hits itself in the line trace. The second actor that we want to ignore is the player character, as they're going to be holding the weapon. So if we just right click and look for get player character and connect this into here, our line trace will ignore itself and the player character, because currently right now I think it's accidentally hitting them. I'll go compile and save, close this and go play. And now whenever I shoot my line trace, it should just be red. And whenever I hit something, it will go green. So when my line trace hit this wall, so I think it has a world static collision, it went green because it hit it. And with this, we have a simple weapon firing system. Hello, in this lecture, we're going to create an enemy character. So to get started, right click and create a new folder and just call this enemy. Then if you head inside here and briefly close Unreal Engine, attached in this video, I'm going to make sure to include these two images, melee move and melee death. Just drag them into your Unreal Engine project. Once you've done that, select both images, right click and go sprite actions and apply paper to the texture settings. Then if you select this second image, right click on it and go sprite actions, extract sprites and select extract. Then if you select all four of these sprites, so if you hold the shift button, it will allow you to select multiple sprites. Right click and go create flipbook and just call this melee move. Then if you select the second image, right click and go sprite actions, extract sprites and go extract. Just delete these little red dots as it didn't extract the image properly. And then if you select all the death sprites, right click and go create flipbook and we can just call this melee death. Then if you select the last sprite, right click and go create flipbook and just call this dead body. And now we're ready to code our simple enemy character. So to get started, right click and go blueprint class and select a character and just call this the BP underscore enemy. And if we double click and head inside here, the first thing we want to do is go add and look for a paper flipbook. For the paper flipbook, just select the melee move that we just made and just rotate it 90 degrees so it's facing this little blue arrow. So I'll go here, select and rotate objects and I'll rotate it 90 degrees. Then I'm just going to scale it up so it fits in the capsule. So I think that is fine. Then if we go over to the event graph, we're basically going to make it so our enemy is always facing the player character. In order to do that, we can use the event tick node. And if I just drag up here and look for set actor rotation, then if I right click on this new rotation value and go split structure pin, we're just going to basically be setting our enemy's rotation in the z-axis so it faces the player character. So if we right click and look for defined look at rotation, right click on this return value. And what we can do is get our actor starting location. So if I just right click and look for get actor location and connect this into start. And for the target where we want this to look at, we can right click and look for get player character. And from here, we can look for get actor location and connect from here into target and from Z into here. So basically every single frame will basically make it so our enemy is facing towards our player character. However, we only want our enemy to do this if it can see the player character. So if we just create a new variable and let's just call it can see player, then we will just drag this in and get it. And only if the enemy can see the player will basically make it face them. So I'll connect from here into here and true into here. So we've handled our enemy's rotation. The next thing we're going to do is handle our enemy's movement. So if you go back to the viewport and just go add and look for pawn sensing. This will add loads of lines. We're only concerned with the green line. So if I just play around with the sight radius, this will affect the green line. And if I play around with the peripheral vision, this will affect the angle at which the enemy can see the player character. So you can play around with those values if you want to change how the enemy can see the player. But I'm going to leave this at the default value of 90. And here in sight radius, I'll leave this at 5000. With the pawn sensing selected, scroll down and go on see pawn. So this will fire whenever it sees a pawn. And if we just drag over this pawn and look for cast to BP first person character, on see pawn, if we can cast to the first person character, that means the AI can basically see the player character. So we'll just drag in our can see player variable and set it so it's true. This will then make it face our player character. After we do this, we want our AI to move towards our player character. So I'll just drag off here and look for AI move to. For the pawn, just drag up here and look for self. So this will just get a reference to itself. And for where we want this AI to move to, we can just drag in our BP first person character and connect it to target actor. And this will basically make it so the AI will move towards the player character. And for the acceptance radius, this basically controls how close it will move towards the player character. So the smaller this value, the closer it will move towards the player character. And the higher this value, it will basically stop moving towards the player character once it's reached this acceptance radius. The final thing we want to do with our AI is make it so it can die. So if I just right click and look for event any damage, the way we set up our pistol weapon, we made it so it does 1 damage. So event any damage, if this AI is hit by our pistol weapon, we are going to drag in the paper flipbook, drag up here and just look for set flipbook. And we want to select the melee death flipbook. So this one, melee death 1, and connect from here into here. Then we just want to drag up here and look for get flipbook length. This will get how long this flipbook will play for. And we're going to have a delay of however long this flipbook lasts. And after this delay, we can just copy these 2 nodes. We are going to play our enemy's dead body flipbook. So I think I called it body. Yeah, dead body. So after our melee death flipbook has finished playing, we will play the dead body flipbook. Then we'll have a delay of, let's say, 4 seconds. And then we will destroy our actor. We also want to make it so that if we damage our enemy, it basically stops moving because it's dead. So in order to achieve that effect, we can just drag in the character movement and just drag up here and look for deactivate. And this will make it so our AI can no longer move. And then finally, we just want to drag off this event any damage and look for do once, because I only want this to happen once. And I'll connect from here into here and here into here. We can compile and save this. And if I just close this and then drag in my BP enemy somewhere into my project, in order to make sure that AI can move around in our levels inside of Unreal Engine, we need to add something called a nav mesh bounds volume. To add that, just go add and look for volumes and select nav mesh bounds volume. Drag this down somewhere into your level. And if you press the P button, it will let you see the area that the AI can move around. Just go to select and scale objects and scale this across the whole of your map. And one more thing with your enemy will be facing the direction of this arrow. So I realized I kind of placed my enemy backwards. So if you just select and rotate it so it starts facing our player character. And now if we go play, when our enemy sees us, it will move towards me. If I shoot it, it will stop moving and then die. So with this, we have created a very simple enemy. By the way, that enemy was very fast. So if you want to change the enemy speed, just go over to the character movement, look for walk speed. Yeah, here it is, max walk speed, and play with this value. So if I make this something like 300, then go play, it'll be a lot slower and I can just shoot and kill this guy. Oh, and one more thing, if you want your first person character to have that retro FPS camera look and feel, if you open up the first person character blueprint and select the first person camera, scroll down and just uncheck use pawn control rotation, then go compile and save. And now in your project, the player won't be able to move the camera up, they'll only be able to move the camera towards the left and the right, just like in the classic Doom games. That's all for this video. If you want to learn how to create a full Doom game with multiple enemies, weapons and more, check out the full course. The link will be in the description of this video.